Hey guys, so today we're going to talk about the TFT Shield touchscreen with Arduino. Now ours was bought with illegal, and although it says it's a 2.8 TFT board, it is, but our Arduino Uno acts as a breakout board, and we are using the 9341 LCD driver. It's important to find out which exact driver you're using, so when you're downloading the code or you're calling something onto your screen, it is important to know what kind of LCD driver you have. Now, before we go into the code to show you how to use the board, what you need to go over are your libraries, which is super important, and understand how the folder structure works. Now, when you download the Arduino software, in the Arduino software pre-installs your libraries and a little folder. So if you go to search, and I have it pre-searched over here, and I have this Arduino folder, if I double click that, you see it says libraries, graphic test, and screen touch. Now this over here I had added myself onto the side. But if you see here, it says libraries, and if you double click your libraries, you have different kinds of libraries. Here you only have, I think there's one folder pre-installed in the Arduino software, but you can go ahead in your Arduino software and download more and just place them into your libraries. What's really important is if you download them from a different site. So we have here the Adafruit Circuit Playground, which is important because I could be using these kind of libraries as well. And I have here the Iligo GFX and the 9341 for the LCD driver. These libraries are installed from the internet, and when they're from GitHub or any kind of education system, sometimes they provide this. What you want to do is they'll end up in your downloads folder, which I have too in my downloads. So if I go into my downloads, it already comes pre in here. So something that's important is to make sure that you put it inside your libraries in order for you to call it in your software when you're writing your code. So sometimes we can pre-install our libraries. If you just go to Sketch and include library, you either can include your library, so these are already libraries that are here, or you can go to Sketch, include, and manage libraries. When you manage your libraries, it'll look inside the Arduino software and it'll look inside the internet for different kinds of libraries that you can go ahead and install into your Arduino set, so you can use them for any kind of cool things. So before we start, how I found out that I have the ILI 9341, there is a website called educ8s.tv, and if you go onto their site, they have this whole tutorial on how to use the Arduino 2.8 touchscreen. Now, what they do is if you go down, they tell you where to buy it, the Uno, the Mega, those are the different kinds of boards. And if you keep scrolling down, it'll tell you about the libraries and the modified libraries that they have, so that if you want, you can download them. Of course, it'll download into here, or and again, you have to move it into your libraries folder that comes with the Arduino. And if you continue to go down, it'll show you this code where it says to code of the project. Now the code of the project is right here. It's called Screen Touch. And what you do is if you download this onto your Arduino, first let's verify it. Verifying is just compiling your code, making sure that there are no errors or anything like that. So if I'm done compiling, it shows me that I have no errors. So I can go ahead and upload this into my Arduino. In order for me to go ahead and download that into my Arduino, I have to make sure that the board, it says it is using the genuine Uno, which is what I have now. And you also have to make sure that you're in the right port. So if you go down to port, right now, because I have a MacBook Pro, sometimes this says COM1 or COM2 because you could directly put it into your computer, but I am using an extra modem so that I can convert the USB file for my Mac. So I'm going to click here where it says Arduino/genuine Uno. I have to make sure I'm using that modem, otherwise there is no connection. So what I do is I'm going to go ahead and I compiled it, I uploaded it. Now what's going to show up on my screen, I'm going to take a picture so you guys will be able to see it on the side, but if I go to Tools and Serial Monitor, it also provides a little window of what you're doing with your code. So here in my code it's saying that it's starting, and if I look over at my code, right, it says serial.begin, right, and it says starting, and it's also starting over here on my monitor. So if I go ahead and touch my screen, the code is telling me, I know that my touchscreen is being receptive. So that's also very, very important to note that it's being receptive. So you can play around with that code if you want. You can play around with the different kinds of codes. It's totally fine. Something to also note to make sure that your Arduino is working perfectly fine is that there are these pre-installed, if you go inside File, Examples. Once you finish downloading the kind of library that you want, if you scroll all the way down, there's examples for your TFT board. So because I am using the illegal one, I decided to just use the graphic test. So if I go down to the graphic test, I verify it, of course, because you want to make sure. The graphic text is actually perfect because you get to see a whole bunch of different kinds of sketches in your Arduino screen. And once this is done uploading, and I go to my serial monitor, there's going to be a display. But if you look here, as my screen is going, the serial monitor that's kind of explaining what's going through my code is telling me what's happening. So it's telling me the size of my Arduino, which is a 240 by 230. The LCD driver it found, it's right here. So this kind of test, the graphic test, is very important because if you have a different kind of TFT shield screen, it's important to note that. Okay, now we know that this is working, our graphic test worked, and our screen touched work. So now we're going to go over the kind of code that we want to create in order to do this. Now the project that we have is one to kind of communicate to the people, telling them that they're overusing water or how much water they're using. So now, if I verified my code, of course, it's going to tell me that it's compiling again. It's so important to compile because you don't want to upload an error. Sometimes if your screen turns white once you finish uploading this, it's probably because we have an error in there, but you can't quite find it. It's probably a space, something's misspelled, or you have an extra period somewhere that you don't need to have a period. So anyways, in order for us to have any kind of communication and any kind of graphics, what we want to do is we want to include our libraries. These libraries are really fun things. So it allows you to do extra graphics or anything like that. Again, so if I go to my Arduino software and let's say I pick, let's say I pick this illegal TFT LCD, which gives me a whole bunch of different commands that I can do. I'm going to go down here. I'm going to go to my TFT LCD.h. It's important to do the .h. TPP means C++. It's almost the same, but they have different kinds of files there, so you call them differently. Now, what you have here is the code. So you can see here it's written in Java, and if you keep going down and keep going down and down, you have void, draw pixels, draw fast H-line. These are the kinds of functions that you have with this TFT library. So it's allowing you to draw your circles, your triangles, your squares, and text and everything with these kinds of libraries. So that's my TFT LCD, and if I go and look for another one, let's say I do the GFX, which is my graphics. Now I'm going to go to my graphics. It's the same thing. It's allowing me to have different kinds of like font or whatever. But if I look down in my library, what it's telling me is that this is allowing me to draw circles, draw a circle helper, fill circle, fill. So you can call these back into your code depending on what exactly you want to do. So this kind of gives you an insight as to what properties you can give your shield screen. So if I go down here, I have included my libraries, right? You have to make sure this is how you include them, and depending on what you want to use. So I want to use the TFT LCD.h, and I want to use this, the illegal GFX. I also want to use the touchscreen one. So touchscreen comes with does not come with the software, but if you just Google the touchscreen, they'll give you the library there. So I go down, I want to make sure I have to define my pins. So in the back of your LCD screen, what you will have are the pins where it says LCD CS and then CD. This is where you're saving, writing, reading, and resetting your set. So these are the pins that it goes into, the A3, A2, A1, A0. These are all the analogs. Now, something to note too is that our screen, our X min is 251. All this stuff comes with your Arduino. Usually it's all the same with the TFT shield screens. And again, this is all the same thing. Now this define I'm defining different kinds of variables so that I can call them later on, defining different names. So over here, I see black. This is my black, right? We're using the RGB, the hexadecimal version of the colors on the computer screen, so I don't have to write 0 times 0 0 0 0. What I can only write is I can write black and it just calls my black. If I want to write blue, it will just call my blue. It's important to use these kinds of names so that you don't get confused later on. If you don't care, it's okay. It doesn't matter. So I keep scrolling down. I have my Lego TFT LCD. So I'm creating a brand new object with my library. This is so important to do because this way it allows you to do the different kinds of functions that you need to do. And over here, I have my variables for my different kinds of functions that I want and what exactly I want to do. So I have here a keypad, obviously, that I'm going to be using that calls numbers 0 to 9 for people to enter in numbers. I have my Boolean button enabled false. And these things are really important because your Booleans, which is only true or false, allows you to like enable a button. So if somebody clicked this, then you can go to and do that, or anything that you can imagine. Now you have your void setup. Void setup is very important. Like I said, void setup is how your home screen and your whole Arduino set is going to run. It's where everything is mainly executed. So here, if I look at my serial monitor, it's going to start that it's stating. Now, TFT.reset means that I'm going to reset the screen of my Arduino set. And once I begin, you see this number here is very important. It's a 341 LCD driver that we're using. Rotation, you have 4 rotations, right? You can set it to 1, 2, 3, or 4. That just, it depends on what your X and Y values are going to be, depending on how you want your screen to look. So here I call over my functions called home screen, enter amount, and display result. So if I kind of just scroll on down, these are very important because if I continue to scroll down, what I'll find is the void home screen. Now, this is how I begin one of my functions. I call it void because I'm not really returning anything. I'm not returning anything to the main function. I'm just showing some kind of display. So home screen is the most important. I want to remember that this is the home screen of my Arduino set. So home screen, and then I start to draw everything. So TFT.fill screen black. It's important that you fill the screen black or whatever color you want it as a background. And from here, I begin to draw everything that I have. I have a whole smiley face. I have the name of the robot. So I am Arduino, the H2O bot. You can change the font that's inside here. If you keep scrolling down, what we'll have is the other ones that I had, the other functions. So enter amount when somebody's entering the amount. Now this enter amount though is just the screen. It's not the exact function of how this is calculating or touching the buttons. The buttons, you want to make sure you put them in a loop, because if you put them in the loop this way they can continue registering the pressure points. So if I go all the way back to the top and I scroll down a bit, it says here void loop. This loop is letting me know where my pressure point is. This is allowing me from the touchscreen library that I have. It's allowing me to register all the X and Y values that I have. So here this serial print is just from that serial monitor that we have. It's just letting me know where my fingers are. P.X and P.Y are my variables for where everything is on the map. And now I rename my P.X, X, and Y because it makes it a lot easier for me to write instead of writing a longer variable. Therefore, once I do this, so this is telling me if I push a button and a button is, and I'm including my button, is enabled, right? So if I push this on the red button, then it's going to go to enter amount. Now I'm connecting my screens together, my functions together, right? So I had the functions a home screen, enter amount, and display results. So now I also have here int detect button. This is another function that I have. This function here is allowing me to create a window for where my buttons are. Now on the picture below, you'll see that the screen has a display on the bottom of the screen from 0 to 240, right? This is where my button is going to be. So I have to collect my X and Y values. My X and Y values I found by drawing out the screen. It makes it easier for me to kind of know. Now this is for every single screen that I have. I have 0, the number 0, 1, 2. Now there's different kinds of tutorials online too where you can find a calculator or something like that if you want to do something a little more simple. After that, because what we're doing is converting the water usage from what we're doing is converting this water usage of our home to different kinds of values, I have to have some kind of function that will calculate that. So if I go and I continue to go down, I have another results, a display results. That's my third screen. And so I have here my variables, gallons, baths, showers. And so if I enter a different kind of amount of number, like the number that we're entering is the number that you see in your water meter, which is a CCF, right? Cubic feet. In Europe, it is cubic meters. Now, also depending on your residential area and things like that, it depends on how much you would pay for your water. But once you enter that CCF, it goes into the whole function and it carries it down. So now what I have to do, I call the CCF number. It comes in and it converts my numbers into gallons, right? So I have my formula here, and then if I go down, what it's going to do is print out everything. So this is what my display screen is going to have. That is approximately blah, blah, blah gallons. I know that there is an easier way to do this, but this is the easiest way to read if you are a beginner. So I even included a website on the bottom, but this of course will be, you have to enter this online in order for you to take a look at how to calculate your water bill. Because again, every state is different, including if you live in a city or residential area. So based off of all of this, what you should be able to do is go through the code and manipulate it however you want. Again, it takes some time to go through it and really read line by line, making sure we don't have mistakes. And so again, it's important to note that if you're having issues writing the kind of code that you want, or writing down what exactly you want your functions to look like, or how a function is supposed to look like, you can always just Google online how to code generally in Java, and there are many, many, many tutorials online on Stack Overflow and things like that that will explain how to write code in Java. And this way, once you do it on your Arduino, you should be able to translate it easily. So one more time when we'll go through this, you have to include your libraries all the way at the top. You have to define your pins and your max X and Y values. Again, here you go. I'm defining my pins, and then I'm defining colors in order for me to write it down easily. Here I'm starting my brand new object, so I'm calling in my libraries to make sure that I can use them properly. These are my variables that are going to be traveling throughout the whole scene. So I'm traveling around. Oh, my little kitty cat wants to make, he wants to tell you about coding too. So on top of that, you need your variables. These are the variables that are floating around. They're also called global variables. They're just floating around, and these are the ones that are going to be in and out of different kinds of functions. My void setup is very important. Again, void setup is what is going to be executed and what your screen is going to look like. You call all your functions back over here. So right now I just have it that my home screen will show for an X amount of seconds. It's going to also, then my enter screen is going to show, then my display result is going to show. On the bottom here, I have my loop. My loop is where my buttons are enabled, and over here, once I have enter amount, I can also think of how to display my results and all that good stuff once I find the X and Y values for my buttons. On the bottom is my detect buttons. My detect buttons function is a mapping system for my 0 through 9 numbers for my keypad that I have. You can see my X and Y values here. Here are my Y values, and here are my X values. Again, in order for you to properly draw this out, sometimes it's easier to map it out as I did on paper, because it becomes easier. So this one's a little bit more lengthy just because of the amount of numbers that I have. Now I have int calculate, so this here is just calculating my CFF, of course, because this can only enter 4 numbers, and so then each number is a different kind of place value. So I have this here written together. So my calculate, so it's calculating my CFF. It's also allowing me to display it properly on the screen that I have. And here is my home screen function. Of course, this is what I called at the beginning of my void setup. My home screen function is all of this, right? So I have my set cursor. This is where I want to print my hello text. I want it in white. I want it text size 3. Same thing goes for the hello. I am Arduino bot. This Arduino bot, he is going to be text size 2. And then I have my rectangles that I'm building here. This rectangle is a smiley face. All of this is a smiley face that I have. This is the mouth. These are the eyes. And then I have over here the actual face, which is a rectangle. Then on the bottom, I create a little button. The bottom on the bottom is let's talk about our water usage. And all of that has been formatted to make it look. I compile it every time and display one screen at a time in order for me to make sure that my screen looks exactly what I want it to look like. Excuse me. And then after that, I have my void enter amount. So this is my void enter amount. This is when I'm entering the numbers. This is just the screen, right? I have fill screen black, white, blah, blah, blah. I have all that good stuff. I drew my keypad on the bottom. This is what my keypad looks like, all right, from 0 to 9. And then after that, I display my labels. So this, I use the for loop to display the numbers 0 through 9. It makes it a lot easier. I put in the size and I printed I. And then I call over my detect buttons and then display amount. So all of this, my display amount, which is right down here. I'm also calculating my cubic feet number. So it's calculating, then it's going to be displaying on the little cyan piece the different kinds of numbers that I decide to input. Print number is the CFF number that I have called before. Going down, I have my void display result. So again, this is now the function that I'm using in order to calculate my last screen to let people know how many showers, baths, flushes, and dishwashes I'm making. I can add more, I can add less. It depends on what I'm doing. And then once you verify that your code is working fine, what you can do is just verify, and then you can go ahead and upload up to your Arduino set, and your Arduino screen should reflect exactly what you want it to look at. And that's it. I hope you guys have fun coding.